Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, and I would like to welcome you to this podcast where we talk about CNC machines. And in this case, we kind of lean towards CNC routers. But this episode is going to cover how do you charge for the projects that you make when you are trying to get them out to market. So I am again with my Canadian partner, friend, Bill, up in Canada. He's in Ontario, and this is just going to be a thing. You're going to have to get used to Bill being on this podcast because it was his brainchild that got me started on it. So it's really his podcast. Anyway, yeah. So one of the things we get asked all the time is how do we charge for our projects? And that's a sticky area. I mean, I get it. I get the question. So Bill and I are going to dive into it with some story about charging and some of the other elements you have to take into account, not just the time that you spend on your stuff and the money you spend on the stuff to make a project, but also the psychology behind it, which is a very fundamental aspect. So before I hog up this whole podcast, I want to let Bill say hello and give his little 2 cents about what his thoughts are at the top, like the bird's eye view of charging for projects. So Bill, take it away, my friend.
First off, hello everybody. And second, I'm actually in New Brunswick, not in Ontario.
Oh, my bad.
Not that it matters. That's right. Not that it matters.
It's Canada. It's all the same to me.
It's all the same, right? It's all snow.
Yeah.
All snow. So pricing. Yeah, you know what? I get asked about pricing not often, but I see it a lot on the Facebook groups. And pricing is a sensitive subject. Doesn't matter who you are or what you do. It's a sensitive subject, and it's a hard subject. It's difficult. It's difficult to nail it down. You know, it's difficult for me to price something that somebody else might price differently, and what works for me might not work for you. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we do. Yes, we do. So, Bill, you've been in the market a lot longer than I have, making CNC projects and selling them. And if you were to pull back, like in an objective view, and see yourself and the customer and what they're buying, what do you think is at the heart of when they're selecting your project and asking you, "This is what I want"? What do you think is at the heart of it?
I mean, if you look at the small scale CNC products, everybody wants customized items, and that's really the market and the push behind people wanting to buy things from you. Anyone can go down the street, go to the Walmart, dollar store, home hardware, wherever you want to call it, and buy something. But if you can take that product and personalize it, you know, it makes it that much more appealing.
Right. Yeah. So we just did a podcast. There will be a link down in the description to it, but it was how to start a CNC business. And Bill was sharing his story about how he actually got started in one of his projects out of just a gift. So you may want to take a minute to watch that to see how most people get started in their CNC sales. So when you first got into selling your projects, how were you pricing up front as opposed to how you price now?
I mean, it's not a long story, but I mean, my background is more commercial, where I had a CNC at a sign shop where we would price, if I was CNC for somebody, you know, we would price by the hour. So if that table was running and this job took me 30 minutes of runtime, that runtime was built into that price. But you're talking about commercial products, commercial customers, it's a little bit different. So when I started at home, I kind of had that same mentality, but I knew that the market around me just wouldn't support that kind of pricing. So I started off, most of the stuff I lost money on, honestly. I mean, you want to get your products out there, And my goal was to at least recoup my cost, because the time is the big factor for me. How much time you spend on something, and how you your time and how you get paid for that. So when I started, like I said, it was almost net zero. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so you said you lost money on most of your early projects. Can you dive into that a little bit more? Why did you lose money?
I didn't. I lost money in the sense that if you look at it like a business, so I say I sell a product, and I know I'm just getting started out, and I know I can sell this product for, let's say, $50. And I sit down at the end of the day, I've sold the product, I've had $5 material, and then I start taking into account my time. If I had 3 hours into that first product, because I'm still learning, I'm still figuring things out. If I had 3 hours into that, I consider that a loss. I mean, when I do this, my time is invaluable to me. I got 3 kids, I got lots of stuff to do. I want to make sure that I'm not wasting my time. So when I say a loss, I mean, I spent more time making something for somebody than I got paid for.
Right, right. That's a key point that you just said. Your time is valuable, and I think there's this deep thing where when we first start getting into making CNC projects, and we want to sell them, that there's this fear that people aren't going to buy it if we set it at a price that's our value. And so we undercut ourselves, and we don't, if you spend 4 hours on a project, your time is money. And so you have to assign a value to your time. And
Yep.
yeah, when we first
And I mean,
start up, yeah, go ahead.
a great example is when I started, I did craft shows around the first Christmas I had my CNC, and I spent weeks preparing, making things that I thought people would want to buy at the craft show. I still have some of that stuff 3 years later.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you know what I mean? Like that's why I think the custom orders and the customization, that's really, where a lot of this goes. Because in my area, I don't have a big population. So if I produce things before they're sold, I'm going to be holding on to them for a bit.
Right. Yeah. Welcome to the club. I've got a box full of stuff that I made. I was getting ready to, or I did make stuff to cater to the Jeep Wrangler crowd, which I own a Jeep Wrangler, so I understand the crowd. But I didn't market it right to the group. And so I've got a box worth of stuff here that's collecting dust. And and it takes a lot of work to actually get into the crowd. As a matter of fact, talking about that, just a little side note, that last podcast I was talking about, Bill was sharing about Facebook. And I talk about Facebook all the time, that's where people hang out at these days. That's where people set up get-togethers. And if you want to make a product, there's two elements that I have found that are really important. And one is what Bill already said, personalization. You can go to Walmart and buy pretty much anything or online, and it's very impersonal and utility. But once you add the personalization, that's where the dollars come into play. And the more personalization it has, the more emotional value it has to the customer, and the less money becomes relevant to it. In marketing, I have learned through my mentors that pricing strategy is not about money. It's about the emotional value that a person is receiving by getting your project. So I don't know. What are your takes? What's your take on that, Bill? Then your experience with some of the stuff that you've sold.
I mean, I'm just looking at my current job list right now, for the CNC compared to what it was before Christmas. Christmas time, it was gifts, all personalized, but it was a preset product where, monograms. I just type their name in, there they go. I have 7 jobs on there right now, and they're all completely custom. Not one of them is the same as the other one. So the customized stuff is really
Yeah.
where it's at. But that being said, I just spoke to somebody yesterday who bought a CNC, and they use it for production to produce a product. So, everybody's different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So when you just said that, it made me think of, well, I want to dive into one of your custom jobs so I can get this thought sorted out, because it's one of those little things that just like, there's something there, but I can't really figure out what the thought is. So
Yep.
dive into one of your custom projects. What is it? And what does it seem to inspire the customer with? And,
Okay.
yeah, take it from
I've
there.
got a good one. I've been dealing with this customer for, she first contacted me 6 months ago. And again, this is a great example of, I'm probably not making any money on this job. The amount of time that I've talked to her, and we've gone back and forth, and the job's changed, and I've quoted and priced, and now it's come to fruition. Basically, it's her and 4 families altogether. They have a plot of land, and they call it, this name of their campground, and they want a sign for out front in the driveway, and then they want 3 separate signs for each one of the buildings. So that's a job that is completely custom, and I'm dealing with one person who's actually dealing with 3 other people. So everybody has their own idea of what they want. And really, to make everybody happy, you've got to get that emotional string where they see that and they go, "Oh my God, it's perfect. I can't wait to put it up." Blah blah blah.
Mhm.
So I mean that's one. Again, if I had known originally when I had given her the price how long this was going to take, I probably would have doubled it. But I gave her a price and I stick with it. So.
All right. So how big is the sign then?
The main sign, I believe, is going to be 30 by 18, I think, is what we ended up with.
Okay.
And then each smaller sign with the family name is 24 by 10, I think.
Okay. Okay.
And it's all outdoor cedar.
Right. So you said it's completely custom. What is it's got a message for a campground. What is the underlying element in it that seemed to make them want this in a certain way?
They call it, they have a name for it. I can't remember it off the top of my head, that they call their campground. So where that name came from, I don't know, but that name means something to all 4 of these families. So for them to, it's a pride thing for them to put that up at the end of the driveway saying, this is our place, what we call it. And my job was to take that and then add some design elements. Ended up just being trees. We tried a couple different images. I tried cabins and campfires, and they ended up just going with some basic trees, which is fine. It's easy for me.
Okay. So it was intended to give that outdoorsy feel with the design in it. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to step back a little bit on this. When you're coming up with projects, well, let's go back even further. A lot of people are asking, what do I charge for a project? But a lot of times I find people don't even know what the projects are that they want to sell. And so it's kind of putting the cart before the horse when you're doing that. What I have found is you want to build a certain skill around a certain type of project and focus on that type of project. When I'm saying that, for example, signs for a small business, like what Bill is doing right now, and get good at that. And then how to, or then you can dive into how do I source or set up the pricing structure for this, because really every project is different. Every project has its own time elements in it. In this case, Bill had to go back and forth with the customer to come up with the right design. And as he just stated, had he known then what he knows now, he would have increased the price up front. So that is, I don't know, what's your thought on that, Bill? Getting to know what you want to make first, or the general scope of what you want to make, and then worry about pricing. Would you agree with that idea?
Yeah, I mean, and there's different ways to approach that too. If you take it from a more business standpoint, uh, if you meet and discuss it with the customer and say, here's our guideline, here's an estimate, um, this is what I think we're going to do, this is what I think it's going to cost. If this happens, if this takes more time, if the size has changed, then the price will be adjusted accordingly. And that's, I mean, I did that a certain amount. Um, but again, the time involved with this stuff is not something that anyone can kind of predict. The,
Right.
the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more you can predict.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. One of the things that I encourage people on my YouTube channel, the name of the channel is idcwoodcraft.com, is when you're considering how to price something, you don't want to put yourself in a $10 an hour rate. If you do that, you might as well go work at a convenience store and earn $10 an hour. Your time and your skill has a value that other people want. And just by virtue of that, makes you worth more than that. So if I was to pull a number out of thin air for I want to say the beginner who is getting some experience, I would say you're running into $20 an hour plus materials. And you should always double your materials when you're doing that. That's the technical side of it. Double your materials. One of the other things that I also encourage is be willing to take on some jobs where there's a little bit of learning time in there. That's going to push you past your comfort zone to learn a little bit more about CNC. You can't really charge for your learning time, but you have to realize in the long run, you're building your skills so you can charge more in the future. And Bill, take it away with what I just said. What do you think?
yeah, no, I think you're right. I think a lot of people have a hard time figuring out the line of, okay, I think this is going to take me 2 hours. I'm going to charge them $40, and then it ends up taking them 6 hours. And it's a fine line. Is can I go back to the customer and say, this has changed, I need to charge you more, or is it my fault for not knowing what I'm doing properly? You know, that kind of line. But I think you're right. Like, you need to include your time, because what happens if this hobby that you're pushing turns into a full-time job? If the product that you're making, if you can only end up making 4 of those a day, and this is a full-time job, are you really going to make any money if you're selling 4 products a day and you're charging $40 an item?
So that's another one or a little going deeper into that. I just finished a sign that was very personalized and had a lot of emotional value to the person. They had me make it as a gift, and it's for a business. And I have an enormous number of hours in this because the majority of it was a learning process. So the I'm charging $250 for it. The time, if I was to take in all my time, probably be more like $1,000. But I chalk it up to learning how to become a sign maker. So one of the things that you want to really be aware of is split the whole concept in two. Understand your skill level and work just beyond that. Charge based on what you think it's going to take you with an hourly rate that you are worth. And then the extra time that you spend is learning time. It's not frustration lost time. It'll have its payback later on. I want to step back a little bit, Bill, to something you mentioned probably 15 minutes ago, where we were talking about Christmas. And I think we were talking about Christmas, or just brought it in there, but it related to our last video or the last podcast. And choosing the product that you want to make, that you want to be able to sell out to the world. The one thing that you want to always keep in mind is the emotional value. This is what most people don't understand, that when people buy something that solves a problem, whether it's an emotional desire to feel better, whether they want to make their kids feel better and special, like Bill's award that he made, also talked about in our last podcast, which talks about getting your business out to Facebook. But what you want to do is think about Christmas for you. When you receive gifts at Christmas time, which gifts tend to make you are the gifts that you seem to really like? And what you'll find is it's not the cookie cutter gifts, but it's always the things that are made specially for you, or bought with a certain thing in mind about you and what you're passionate about. A good example is, have you ever heard of the Pacific Crest Trail, Bill?
No.
You've heard of the Appalachian Trail.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah. So the Pacific Crest Trail is like the sister trail to the Appalachian Trail. It's a 2,650-mile hiking trail that goes through California, Oregon, and Washington. Well, I hiked that trail in 2017, and I was very passionate about it, and probably the best life experience I've ever had, other than talking to you, right? But my brother had sent me my brother had sent me a pocket knife in the middle of the hike, and he had it personally made for me. It said PCT 2017, and it had my trail name on it. And that had an ultra high emotional value. So it's gifts that you receive. If you can look at the things that you make, that how does it have an emotional value to the prospective customer, then you can get higher rates for your stuff, because the higher the emotional value, the more they're willing to pay. It really comes down to that. Go ahead, Bill. Tell me about your experience on that.
Well, I've got a good example of that. Is last Father's Day, I was making just guy stuff. I was making cutting boards and barbecue scrapers and stuff like that. And then I had a woman send me a photo of something on Etsy and asked me if I could do that. And I looked at it and I looked at the price and I was like, not really. It was like picture frame basically with she had her own text that she wanted. It was something that meant something to her. And I said, I can't touch it for that price. She said, oh, I don't care about the price. I just want to get it local. And I kind of took that and I said, well, let's talk about this, because not that I wanted to make money, but it's just like I could actually make something nice and meaningful for. And what we ended up doing was I cut a picture frame out of a walnut with this poem that meant something to her husband for Father's Day. And I think I ended up getting about $120 for it, because I had to explain to her the amount of time that it's going to take me. I've never done it before, to figure out how to make the text fit the space. I had to make a pocket for the frame. She wanted a couple other little things, and I had to use walnut, and I ended up doing it 3 times, I think. And she, at the end of the day, she was ecstatic, but it's because that meant so much to her, what she wanted. In the price, I could have probably charged her double. Wouldn't have mattered.
Right. That's boy, that was a really good example. So she said she didn't care about the price. She wanted something meaningful for her husband, and she wanted it local. So there were 2 emotional values that Bill was feeding or serving when he was dealing with her. And he used the magic word. She was ecstatic. Based on that, I'm sure that she told you thank you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I, at the same time, her idea when she sent me, the original, when we first started talking, was a flimsy press board with lettering on it. And we went from that to, a piece of 1.5 walnut with V groove text in it. So, I took her expectations and kind of just ran with it and blew it out of the water for her.
Oh, okay. So
Because
here's another magic
I
bullet.
wanted it to mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
Because I wanted it to be special and, high quality, not, I didn't want to put some vinyl cut and slap it on a piece of wood for her.
Right. Okay. So this is the magic bullet to setting higher prices for your projects as well. What the customer came in with an idea, and Bill worked with her to bring that idea to a much more beautiful outcome. And so he's helping her paint a picture in her mind of something that's even better than she was going to accept. And by doing that, Bill upped the emotional value to her and then delivered or over delivered by working with her and coming up with an end result that she started with that was a much lower quality, if you will, type of idea. So if you can learn to work with your customers and take your creativity and throw your creative ideas out to the customer, you're going to increase the outcome value of that project and therefore be able to ask more money for it. Now, one of the things that Bill did was, I don't know if you understood that you did this, Bill. When you talked to her, you said, I can't do that for that kind of money, right? So, but she already had it set in her mind that she wanted something meaningful. And so from that point of saying, I can't deliver this to you, she's in the space, well, I want it. And so that's a psychological little element that goes on between sales. And then Bill, she said, I want it. And so Bill went and took that. And as I said, expanded on the whole idea, explained what goes into coming up with this amazing creation that he ended up coming up with and was able to get a lot more for it. So that's the deep psychological thing about setting prices. It's gotta, if you want to make money with a CNC machine, you have to get good at understanding what personalization is about and being able to tap into the person who wants the project and understand the underlying meaning behind it that's going to fulfill this emotional value. It's always about value in one way or another. And so he added a ton of value to her by working with her to create something even better. And Bill, that's boy, I just kind of tore that one apart just so people could understand what happened, the underlying dynamics. But that's the way it works.
And part of that too is you need to feel valued for the service you're providing. If you, like, I gave her a price that I felt good about, that wasn't crazy expensive, that I felt good doing the work that she, I didn't give her a price that I thought, that I wanted to regret later. Even though the changes in the time involved, by the end of the day, I felt good. She felt great. It was a win-win, right?
Yeah. So did that result in more business?
I think she got a monogram at Christmas time, but I think that was it.
Okay. So did you ask her, hey, if you ever think of this with somebody else, can you recommend me?
No, honestly didn't.
Yeah. Okay. So that is something I would like to pass on to CNCers. When you're making a project, at the end, when you see people happy, make sure that you plant in their mind. It's okay to ask, you're happy with this. Would you be okay to recommend me in the future to people if they come across that? And if they're that happy and as grateful as Bill's customer was, of course they're going to say yes, and they're going to do it when they come up with that. The other thing is, if you have a happy customer, drop a note to them later. just like Bill, send her a card and ask her where's that picture hanging at? How does it look in the environment? And what you're doing is you're reminding the person that you are the connection to that meaningful project. So customer relation is a big deal. Your customers aren't a dollar figure. They're not it's just not a dollar figure or a number. They're a person just like you, and they want to have a solution to something, and they want you as the maker of an amazing project to care about it as much or more than they do, because it's your energy in the end that's going to make or break the deal.
You know what I find people enjoy is I always ask for a photo. So when somebody takes the sign, brings it home, depending on what it is, I always say, hey, you know what? When you get it, when you paint it, depending on what they get, send me a picture, right? And that just opens up
Yes.
more dialogue.
Perfect.
You know,
Perfect.
and then, you know, 2 weeks later, they can send you a photo, say, oh my God, I love it. Oh, so and so saw it. They want to get one. I gave them your info.
Yep. You know what? There's a story. That's beautiful. You know, it's got a story. And Bill was part of that journey even after he delivered the project. He created that by saying, can you send me a picture? I do that all the time too. This is how you're going to create the relationship that you need to build in your business that gives repeat customers. You know, this lady one day will, you know, when she will come back because he gave so much emotional value to her. Eventually, that's just going to pop up again. So,
yeah, or somebody's going to see that.
Yeah.
And, you know, somebody's going to see that and say, hey, where'd you get that? And she's going to have such an emotional attachment to it. She's going to be more than happy to share it.
Right. Right. So let's kind of go back to the basics and walk back up the ladder we just walked in, kind of a summary statement. You want to take off with that?
Nope. Go ahead. Lost in thought here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, well, so when it comes to what do you charge, the first thing is just put yourself into an hourly rate and try to get a general idea how much time it's going to take, and tell the person it's that much money. If they can't or are unwilling to pay it, then you walk away from the job and go on to the next one. Don't be afraid to say no, because if you decide to take on a job that's going to undercut your value, then you're just doing something you're losing money on when you could potentially be doing something in the future that you could be making money on. Set yourself an hourly rate and say no. The next thing is understand that what you're making as a CNCer, don't try to be a cookie cutter, like do what the big box places do. You have the power to create enormously valuable, meaningful projects that are very creative. And then work with your customer. You get to know them and what they want. Be creative with them and help build the value. And then you can go back and say, well, I have to do this and this and this. So then that's going to up the cost on this. And because you got more value, you can up that cost. And from there, you build the relationship, make the project, deliver it to them, and then stay in touch with them and ask them if they're happy, can they refer you? And they're going to. And that's how you're going to build a business. You've built relationships and friendships. None of us want to do business with people we don't care about or we don't have some kind of relationship with. And also, what kind of things you want to make. Look at what means something to you. And Christmas presents are a great idea. You either just get something. If you get a gift card, okay, so someone gave you $10, right? But if they gave you something that's personalized to something about you, that has a lot of value and you cherish it. So that's what you're creating when you're making stuff for other people. And that's where you want to focus into on CNC projects.
And you know what? I want to add one thing about sometimes the best thing you say is no. A lot of people, when they start off, say yes to everything. And I mean, that's great if everything works out, but that can lead to a couple things. It can lead to you getting over your head. It can lead to taking on jobs that you're not making any money at. And I get it a lot, almost weekly, where somebody will send me a photo of something off of Etsy or Amazon even, and be like, can you make this? And 90% of the time, my answer is no. Like, if you send me something off of Etsy that's $25, it's not worth my time. And if you're honest with somebody and you explain that to them, most people will see that and understand and realize that they're getting local, handmade, sort of, versus buying something online.
Yeah. Yeah. And another way to really reinforce this whole idea of what Bill is saying, well, he said, be willing to say no. But you can go to Etsy and pick out a niche and then look at what projects are moving a lot better than others, and you will find that they're personalized. And the best way that I think to make stuff, and Bill can probably, he'll have to put in his 2 cents on this, is find a project that has a generic aspect to it that can be personalized. And an example is, sorry, Bill, American flags. American flags are generic. They're easy to repeat. They already have a value to it because it's a patriot symbol. And then on top of that, you can carve in a military thing.
Whatever.
Yeah, you can carve in something. Yeah. The brotherhoods and sisterhoods are amazing things. And then you can get the person's name on it. You've got 3 levels of value built into it. And that's why people like that kind of stuff. The point is, if you have a program for a flag, you can just recut that flag constantly, and all you have to do is overlay an icon of some sort. Bill talked about this in the last podcast as well, with his ward hangers and how he added value with those to make people want them. So I don't know. Did I reiterate myself?
Yeah, no, I mean it's perfect. I mean this is really a whole other topic on its own. But
yeah, we'll make another podcast about that one.
Yeah, those niche markets and products, and kind of diving into them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now we have our topic for next time, don't we? So now you're gonna have to cue in for the next podcast, where we are going to talk about what types of projects that you can make that are going to be most productive for you and get the most money for you, that mean a lot to other people. So we'll dive into that in the next podcast. So Bill, you want to give us a wrap up and then we'll say goodbye?
Yeah, sure. Thanks everybody. Hope you enjoyed. I guess we didn't really dive into how to price your product.
Oh, well, maybe we should talk about that.
Yeah, we can get real quick. I mean, but again, it's such a touchy subject. We can go into it. I have mixed emotions about this. Well, I mean, there's a few basic ways that people use, and like we said at the beginning, what works for me might not work for you. When I price a product, because of my area, I look at my market and I see what my market will support. I take a look at my material, I take a look at my time, and then I put a value on both of those until I'm happy with it. And I've got products out there that I've made that I've priced that I'm not selling, and I'm not really willing to drop my price because I know I'm going to be working for free. And there's different ways to do this. Some people want to price products including their machine time. So they say, if my machine's running, I'm charging $60 an hour. That sounds great, but at the end of the day, if you sit there and all of a sudden your item that should sell for $100 is now $300 because you're taking into account all these things, it gets tricky.
Yep.
And the other point too is you need to look at it. Is this a hobby right now that you're trying to get your feet under, you're trying to get into it, or are you treating it as a business? Because if you take those 2 different aspects, those are 2 different things.
Right. And you know, that's another little side angle on that. We talked about Facebook in the last podcast too, just how that's an area. I know I'm kind of sidestepping a little bit from what you just said, but in a way not. Um, when I constantly stress taking pictures of your projects and posting them on your Facebook feeds, when people come to you, they are already priming to pay you. Uh, Whereas you're trying to go to them, then you've got to fight through their resistance. So, and that got cued because Bill, I didn't realize you sent me a picture of the project that he was just talking about in this podcast, and that's amazing. It's not very big. It's made out of walnut. It's got a date on it. It's got a name on it. It's got a poem that's very specific to somebody, and it's actually it has a beautiful simplicity, and it's incredibly personalized. And that's why he was able to. How big is that? Is that 12 inches by 18, or is that smaller than that? What is it?
I think it's 10 by 6, 10 by 14.
10 by 14, $120 for a picture frame that I made. So think about this: personalization, value, get to know the person, add value to their idea, and you run with it. All right, so I know I sidestepped again.
That's all right.
But I just looked at the picture. I was going, holy crap, that's beautiful. I mean, I got a little bit of I could feel my own sense of emotion go up as soon as I saw it, because I could see how it was made and how personalized it was. But I didn't see my name on it. Oh, the other thing he had on it was a date, right? It's got a date on it. If you can personalize it, like the flag, it's got patriotism, and we'll get into that next week. I'm not going to talk about that. So anyway, yeah. So anything else, Bill?
No. I mean, we covered a lot. We still have. We can keep on going for hours, really.
Yeah. So next podcast, we are going to be talking about what types of projects that you can make, where you can optimize your income on and get the highest prices for. Does that sound like a good one, Bill?
Nope, that sounds perfect.
All right. Okay, well, I'm going to give my goodbye for this podcast. I am Garrett with IDC on YouTube, and my website is idcwoodcraft.com, where I teach or have stuff for CNC beginners, pretty much geared towards CNC routers, and sell starter bit sets in the United States, so router bit sets for the CNC router. Bill sells the sets, the same ones, in Canada. Bill, tell us how to find you.
Yes, I do. You can check out the website. It is cncbits.ca for all us Canadians. You can get a hold of me email. It's just bill@cncbits.ca. So pretty easy.
Yep, and I'll put links down in the description here as well. And Bill is just launching a YouTube channel as well. Do you have a name on your channel, Bill? Because I think I've only seen one of your videos.
No,
you'll get it.
I've only got one video. Actually, I've got a video on there from 11 years ago. Yeah, it was me with a chainsaw. So that's how the whole YouTube career started.
So that was your first CNC machine, huh?
Yeah.
Just chainsaw. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this is Garrett, and I hope you have a great day and a better tomorrow. Bill, why don't you check us out?
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening. And if you know what, if you enjoy it, tell your friends and help us get this going. See you next time.